Trump posts a picture of himself as Jesus and the internet explodes. Plus, a holy war has broken out between the Pope and the president over Iran. Who's right? We will discuss. Welcome to the Deep End on Tim Ash Live. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Deep End, where we talk about the news of the day through a pastoral worldview. And yes, this is a crazy thing to report. Trump blasphemes on Sunday. I always say this to people who don't understand why I support Trump over, well, I supported Trump over Hillary Clinton, over Joe Biden, over Kamala Harris. And I'm still a backer. I'm going to be full disclosure here. Okay, I understand. Look, we always have a choice of two poor people to choose from. Two poor candidates, poor character people, because we're all people of poor character. I just don't understand the I'm better than Trump sentiment out there by some voters who think, okay, well, he did this and he said that and he's a bad, bad, bad person. Well, check yourself. Check yourself. Jesus said, take the log out of your own eye. Anyway, he did blaspheme on this past Sunday, posting this image on his True Social account, a picture of him, I guess, of Jesus in Jesus garb, with the angels overhead, the eagles flying overhead, the F-16s flying overhead, the American flag, and his hand is being laid upon a man, healing him somehow, so on and so forth. This is textbook blasphemy. I'm just going to tell you, you do not put yourself out there looking like Jesus, and you don't get away with it in American politics, no matter who you are, believe it or not. The outcry was fast and furious, from Piers Morgan to Hillary Clinton to even Marjorie Taylor Greene, one of the most, well, formerly most pro-MAGA politicians out there. And then, of course, the Trumpkins came out and said, no, this is what he was doing. Really, he's playing 4D chess with his opponents. Oh, please spare me. This guy, Gunther Eagleman, this guy, do not follow this man. This guy is a Trumpkin. This guy is a outrage poster. He loves to get you talking, his engagement bait. And he was sharing how it was a powerful post. It's absolute garbage. X is full of a bunch of poor character people, because we're all poor character people, and they all say weird things. They say whatever they want. There is no defending this post. I repeat, there is no defending this post. I say this all the time about Trump. He gives and he takes away. He gives and he takes away. He gives things to people of biblical conviction. He gave us three very important Supreme Court justices. I'm not going to say they're perfect. Again, no one's perfect. No one's got perfect character. No one's 100%. Only Jesus was. Okay. He defends Christians. He defends Christian values, at least on a policy standpoint. I know we can have a long discussion about how he has not lived according to Christian values. I'm not here to defend his values as how he's lived it. I'm here to defend his policy prescriptions as they relate to the church, which is something that I care about. People don't realize, just go back to the days of Obama and remind yourself of how the Little Sisters of the Poor were facing a federal mandate to pay for contraception or be prosecuted by the federal administration. And Trump miraculously pulled out a victory against Hillary Clinton, was able to replace Justice Scalia with Justice Gorsuch. The rest is history, friend. Christian liberties hung in the balance. Do your research. Do your research. I was there. I was researching. I was watching closely. Hand of God providentially supplied that moment so that Christians could still live their conscience in freedom. Anyway, he gives and he takes away, because then he does stuff like this. He posts a picture of himself looking like Jesus. And for anybody who says it's not Jesus, that is an image of you looking like you're Jesus. Anyway, it didn't go well. The supporters were out there being crazy. The attacks were coming fast and furious. And guess what? He deleted it. So it's gone. For all the people who said he was playing 4D chess and this was kind of some strategic statement to make sure that he was having his way with his opponents, garbage defense of the post. He can read the tea leaves. He knows he suffered a political hit for posting a picture like that. You don't blaspheme the Son of God. And most importantly, you do not replace yourself. You do not replace the Son of God with yourself. Anyway, this morning he was asked about it at a press briefing pertaining to something else, and all people wanted to talk about was the post. And here's what he had to say.
Do you have any questions?
Mr.
president, did you post that picture of yourself depicted as Jesus Christ?
Well, it wasn't depicted. It was me. I did post it, and I thought it was me as a doctor, and had to do with Red Cross as a Red Cross worker there, which we support. And only the fake news could come up with that one. So I just heard about it, and I said, how did they come up with that?
No, sorry. Not buying this one, Trump. Not buying this one, Red Cross worker. I see no Red Cross on it. I see a nurse. I see a military member. I see an old man with a hat. I see a young man with prayer hands. This is not good. This is not good. You've got to realize that this has been 10 years. Trump gives, Trump takes away. Again, the most pro-Christian freedom president in my lifetime? Yes. Yes. And yet, he has a female prosperity preacher as his spiritual advisor who compares him to Jesus on a regular basis. So he gives and he takes away. He puts forward the most pro-life and pro-family justices on the courts. Yes. And yet he often confounds us with bullying tweets and posts on Truth Social. He fights for America. For sure. He cares about this country. And then on Easter, he writes, "Praise be Allah," in a sarcastic post on his Truth Social account as a threat against Iran. And he has every reason to be criticized for doing such. He gives and he takes away. So I am not here to defend. I'm here to absolutely decry it, as you should, because no one takes the place of Jesus. And the political idolatry on the right can very oftentimes be lunacy. I talk about it a lot on this channel. On the left, like the political ideology, the right can be just as bad. And I think that this has to be called out when it happens. But to another topic, and hear me when I say this very clearly, the Pope needs to back off. The Catholic Pope, the leader of 1 billion Christians across the earth, has decided to dip his toes into international diplomacy. In recent weeks, Pope Leo XIV has been an increasingly vocal critic of both Trump and his administration's policies regarding not just the war in Iran, but his policies concerning immigration in this country. The Pope called Trump's threat to destroy Iranian civilization truly unacceptable. And again, this is Trump who gives and takes away. Remember, just last week, he posted, quote, "A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again." I don't want that to happen, but it probably will. However, now that we have a complete and total regime change where different, smarter, and less radicalized minds prevail, maybe something revolutionary, wonderful can happen. Who knows? Anyway, people freaked out about this post, and I will suggest my take on that post is this is classic Trump giving and taking away. This is classic Trump doing what he always does, hijacking the news cycle with an absolutely ridiculous statement that he will never actually do. Okay? This is what he does on a repeated basis. You got to learn. Okay? And I don't want to defend it. I'm not saying this is a great idea. This is what he does. He posts things that are outrageous so as to hijack the news cycle. Now everybody's going to pay attention. And he is the classic boomer dad, if you will. See, I like to think that I have a little grip on what's happening here with Trump and the younger members of our society, because I did have somebody reach out and say, "I can't believe you said it. Do you think he's going to destroy the entire country of Iran?" I said, he is not going to destroy the entire civilization of Iran. This is like for us Gen Xers. I'm a Gen Xer, okay? I grew up with a mom and a dad who would, on a regular basis, regular routine, threaten to beat me into next week. This is what moms and dads did. They used to do, before moms and dads were told to stop spanking and start coddling and start understanding their children's feelings and understanding their children's truth, parents used to threaten. They used to pull hair. They used to use weapons when they spanked us. They used to tell us, we're gonna beat you. My mom's going to hate me for saying this because she watches the show, but she used to say, "I'm going to start spanking and I'm not going to stop." That's what she used to say. Now, did she ever follow through on that threat? No, of course not. That's what that generation used to do. Big threats, but then they would pull it back. That's exactly what Trump did. Of course, he did not annihilate Iran. He forged some semblance of a peace deal that has the propensity to break at any moment. In fact, it could be broken even while I'm speaking to you right now. But anyway, he did back out. By the way, the Democrats called this statement, an entire civilization will die tonight. They called this a war crime, which I thought was funny. Words on a page are a war crime, according to the Democrats. And then when he didn't blast Iran to bits, and then he did broker this tenuous peace deal, the Democrats shifted and called it TACO, which is an acronym for Trump always backs out, which is weird because in this case, he backed out of an actual war crime that they accused him of doing by just stating that he would do it, which he did not do. The news is crazy. Welcome to 2026. Anyway, the Pope has chimed in on the war repeatedly. April 10th, he posts a comment, during a gathering of bishops. He said there was no justification for the spilling of innocent blood. He urged the bishops to proclaim clearly that God does not bless any conflict, which I disagree with fundamentally, by the way. He said that we have to, as disciples of Christ, the Prince of Peace, never stand on the side of those who yesterday wielded the sword and today dropped bombs. Okay, fact check, dear Pope. Iran's leadership slaughtered 45,000 of its own people a few months ago in 2 days, and you said nothing. You said absolutely nothing. They came out in protest of democracy, and 2 days later, they were washing the blood off the streets, and the Pope was silent. And Iran has fast-tracked convictions and executions, by the way, of its own citizens who dared to question the regime. This is a new policy tactic in the nation. Any hint of support for America's aggression against the regime, and you get a fast-tracked court date, trial, if you can call it that, and then an execution. By the way, annual report published Monday on Iran human rights, published by Together Against the Death Penalty, said that Tehran has carried out 1,600 executions last year, and that marked a 68% increase from the year before, and this year seems to be on the track to break that last year's record of 1,639. Not to mention that Iran executed 3 men accused of killing police officers. Accused, not convicted, accused. One of those men executed was a 19-year-old Olympic wrestler named Salah Mohammedim. And this is a country, by the way, that was using women and children last week as human shields around its power plants in the face of Trump's attacks, threats on Truth Social about annihilating civilization. So the Pope decides to chime in suddenly. Complete silence about Iran's terrorist Islamic regime killing its own citizens, and speaking up now because it's politically favorable. The political winds are in his favor. He gets good airtime when he comes out against Trump. Anyway, on April 11th, the next day, another article came out saying he was denouncing the delusion of omnipotence, which he says fuels the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran. Not a good look for the Pope, if you ask me. The Pope and his predecessors have a history of anti-Semitism. They do. Just check the facts on that. The silence of popes during the Second World War is a thing to behold. Anyway, the Pope said enough of the idolatry of self and money, enough of display of power, enough of war. It is here that we find a bulwark against the delusion of omnipotence that surrounds us and is becoming increasingly unpredictable and aggressive. Even the holy name of God, the God of life, is being dragged into the discourse of death. He was talking about Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, who invoked Christian faith imagery in the war commentary as it carries on, or actually did carry on for several weeks. We have to remember what regime we're dealing with when we talk about Iran. And when the Pope is defending an Islamic regime, I get alarmed as a Christian pastor. And I think it's alarming when Catholic leaders continually speak out in leftist tropes on public platforms, knowing full well that they'll find a ready audience, such as on 60 Minutes last night when 3 Catholic leaders took to criticizing Trump's policies regarding illegal immigration in Iran. And the citizens, dear priest or cardinal or bishop or whatever he calls himself, a report this week came out that 20,000 homicides happened in America in 2024. 13,000 of those homicides were from the hands of illegal immigrants. Don't forget that in 2024, it was reported while Biden was still in office that 13,000 immigrants convicted of homicide were living in the United States outside of immigration detention facilities. The idea that we should be soft on illegal immigration because illegal immigrants commit crimes at a lower rate than citizens is a stupid argument. They've already committed the crime of crossing the border illegally. We don't have to continue to argue this case. This is just a fact. You can't do this with other countries. Americans cannot just go into another country and live there and just live there as long as they want and then just never expect to ever face the music. This doesn't happen anywhere else. Why should it happen here? That's my argument, and I stand by it. Anyway, why let anyone into a country that could commit a crime if they came here illegally in the first place? Doesn't this also speak to that person's will and inclinations? And I would say this also about the Catholic leaders who are speaking out against Trump because they know it's politically favorable and CBS would give them a primetime spot on Sunday night. It's just kind of weird how these Catholic leaders are totally willing to get in on left-wing news outlets that would support 100% free access to abortion everywhere all the time and call out the president for trying to close our borders and illegal crossings when illegal immigrants have murdered 13,000 of our citizens. Where is the voice of the Catholic leaders when it has been reported this week, by the way, that Planned Parenthood performed a record number of abortions last week? Where were the Catholic priests on that issue? I thought the Catholic Church was pro-life. I thought that they stood against these atrocities. Anyway, Trump engaged back with the Pope, and he did issue another long attack on Truth Social. He gives and he takes away. Quote, Pope Leo is weak on crime and terrible for foreign policy. Okay, he's not a president. He's a pope. He talks about the fear of the Trump administration, but he doesn't mention the fear that the Catholic Church and other Christian organizations that had during COVID when they were arresting priests, ministers, and everybody else for holding church services, even when going outside and being 10 and even 20 feet apart. I like his brother Louis much better than I like him because Louis is all MAGA. He gets it, and Leo doesn't. I don't want a pope who thinks it's okay for Iran to have a nuclear weapon. I don't want a pope who thinks it's terrible that America attacked Venezuela, a country that was sending massive amounts of drugs into the United States, blah, 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 blah. He goes on and on and on. And anyway, nonetheless, this attack goes back and forth, this fight, and we have just a crazy news cycle between the president and the pope. And I got to be honest with you, in this case, I'm on the president's side. And I'm going to explain that in just a moment. But out of nowhere, before we get to that, out of nowhere, the craziness of the news cycle continues. The president of Iran issued a statement on his official X account today saying, His Holiness, Pope Leo XIV, I condemn the insult to your excellency on behalf of the great nation of Iran and declare that the desecration of Jesus, the prophet of peace and brotherhood, is not acceptable to any free person. I wish you glory by Allah. End quote. I mean, what kind of a news cycle do we have here? You have the president of an Islamic nation coming to the defense of the Catholic Pope, while at the same time denying the deity of Christ in his defense of the Catholic Pope, and praising the false god of Allah on behalf of the Catholic Pope, who is criticizing President Trump. Do you understand? It's kind of strange how often Trump makes enemies friends. It's strange times indeed. Anyway, Trump's not backing down. The Pope's not backing down. The Pope says he will continue to speak out against the war, looking to promote peace, promote dialogue and multicultural relationships. Too many people are suffering in the world today. Okay, Pope Leo, too many people are suffering in the world today. I would like to suggest that you get a little bit more tough on the real issues. For instance, how you constantly show an atmosphere of appeasement when it comes to Islam. And I'm not Catholic. I have no dog in this fight, but it's just kind of interesting because you stuck your nose into this political process. But here we have the Pope walking through the great mosque of Algiers in Algeria without shoes while he visits a Muslim country. Do you know why the Pope is not wearing shoes in a Muslim mosque? Do you know why? Because the Muslims say so. And by the way, why is he walking in a Muslim mosque? It's just kind of strange to me that the leader, the pastor, quote unquote, the shepherd of the Christian Catholic Church, if you call it that, is sitting in a Muslim mosque and abiding by Muslim protocols in order to visit that mosque. And then he was on the Pope plane to Algiers, and he was asked a question by a reporter that says that many people in the West are afraid of the rise of Islam and the threat it poses against its citizens. And listen to how he handles this question. Watch.
Some Catholics in Europe believe that Islam is a threat to a Christian identity of the West. Are they right? And what would you say to them?
All of the conversations that I had during my time both in Turkey and in Lebanon, including with many Muslims, were precisely concentrated on the topic of peace and respect for people of different religions. I know that, as a matter of fact, that has not always been the case.
You think?
I know that in Europe there are many times fears that are present but oftentimes generated by people who are against immigration and trying to keep out.
What? What? The people who are against immigration are causing the fear? It's the people who have come in illegally into these European nations that are now running about causing mass hysteria through their criminal activity that I've reported on this channel many, many times before.
People who may be from another country, another religion, another race. And in that sense, I would say that we all need to work together. One of the values of this trip is precisely to raise the world's attention to the possibility that dialogue and friendship between Muslims and Christians is possible. I think one of the great lessons that Lebanon...
Friendship with the world is enmity with God. That's what the scripture says. If somebody denies the deity of Christ, that person is a worldly person. To have a friendship with the person for the sake of dialogue and common peace is not biblical. Now, we are to love our neighbor regardless of how they live or what they believe, absolutely. But when it comes to the Islamic faith, the wool that has been pulled over the Catholic Church's eyes, as far as I'm concerned, from their head, because he speaks for the Catholics. That's what he does. He speaks for the Catholics. Is astounding. Where is the Pope's voice, okay, when it comes to the absolute atrocities against Christians the world over? For instance, in Nigeria, since 2009, 52,000 Christians murdered, 19,000 churches destroyed. You know it's bad, by the way, when John Cleese mentions this. You know John Cleese? Does anybody know John Cleese? John Cleese is from the Monty Python series. He actually produced a movie called The Life of Brian. I'm not sure if he produced it, but he starred in it. The Life of Brian is a mockery of the life of Jesus Christ, this man who believes he's the Messiah. And it's supposed to be a comedy. It's a mockery of Christ. And even John Cleese comes out and says, is anybody going to pay attention to the fact that Islamic people are Islamists are terrorizing Christians in Nigeria? It's pretty bad when John Cleese is louder about this atrocity than the sitting Pope. Not to mention, ISIS soldiers in Mozambique have been beheading Christians left, right, and center in what has now been called a silent genocide. Not to mention that in the Congo, Christians are being slaughtered, beheaded, most times in their sleep. This is the world as we see it right now, where Islam is in charge of the nation and Christians back down. This is why I take Trump's side. This is not a time to back down. This is a time to step up. There were things called the Crusades for a reason, and everybody loves to give the Christians shade because of the Crusades that killed a slight percentage of the number of Christians that were murdered at the hands of Islamic marauders the centuries over, from 600 to 1000 AD. Do research, you'll see what I'm saying is true. The Crusades were simply just a pushback against centuries of oppression. But today, the Crusades are the only things people mention. In Pakistan, young women are told to either convert to Islam and marry a Muslim man or be murdered. Does the Pope have anything to say about that? No. The Pope is too busy making sure that the Muslims have a place to pray to their false god in the Vatican. I kid you not. Watch.
For the first time in its history, the Vatican has set aside a prayer room for Muslims inside the Apostolic Library, a move that has sparked wide debate across media and social platforms. Deputy Prefect of the Vatican Apostolic Library, Don Giacomo Cardinali, said the decision came after several visiting Muslim researchers requested a small space with a prayer rug to perform their prayers. He noted that the library houses remarkable ancient Quranic manuscripts, along with extensive collections of Arabic, Hebrew, Ethiopian, and Chinese heritage, and the oldest Japanese archive found outside of Japan. Founded in 1475, the Apostolic Library is among the world's oldest, containing about 80,000 manuscripts, 50,000 archival documents, and nearly 2 million printed works, in addition to coins and engravings accessible to researchers of all faiths.
Okay, that is what the current Pope is prioritizing. at the Vatican. And then, of course, there's the report from March of this year that dozens of priests molested hundreds of children in Rhode Island for decades. From PBS.org, ironically from PBS, who has been defunded. The report was designed to spark a full reckoning of the abuse that had long remained elusive inside the smallest state in the U.S., home to the country's largest Catholic population per capita. Nearly 40% of Rhode Island is identifying as Catholic. And this is the news that the Pope should actually pay attention to. But no, he's decided to stick his nose into international diplomacy because he knows it's politically expedient with the left-wing news media outlets that will platform him and celebrate him. And sad to say, he is failing his church. He's failing the Catholic Church. That's why I'm not. Another reason why I'm not Catholic, and I'm so glad that I'm not. But I'm here to bring you the news as I see it from a pastoral worldview. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. That is the end of the content, and we do have extra content coming up right now for our subscribers, and I would love it if you'd become a member over at patreon.com/TimHatchLive. We bring you new content every week, and this Thursday we do have 10 Questions with Tim is making its triumphal return for the first time in almost a year. 10 Questions with Tim, noon this Thursday. Get your questions in. Ask at timhatchlive.com. Get them in soon. And if you're a Patreon member, you get priority access. So get over there, patreon.com/TimHatchLive. The extra content will continue right now for subscribers. God bless.